Hey guys, it's Ajad. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Alright, let's talk real. Every kid who dreams of being a programmer in some capacity wants to work at a FAANG company. Like when you were young, maybe in like high school or middle school, you hear people who work at like companies like Google, Amazon, which are really big companies, making hundreds of thousands of dollars straight out of college. And so from that young age, that becomes your goal from day one. Now, what if I told you that you're wrong, that you should not work at a FAANG company? What is wrong with you? Why would you say something like that? What is your problem? You're a hater. But don't worry, I'm not gonna do that. In this video, I'm gonna be exploring the differences between working at like a big FAANG company and a startup. I'm gonna be going over like the pros of working at either of those locations. And so ultimately, hopefully after this video, you should have some more clarity as to which place you probably feel best fit. But the thing is, before I head into this video, I'd really appreciate it if you guys would hit that thumbs up button and consider subscribing to this channel. I post 3 times a week on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, covering everything that you guys need to know in terms of college, career, and computer science. Alright, so pro number 1 for a FAANG company is compensation and security. Now, I know this is probably like a big shocker to you guys considering how little I really talk about compensation for big tech companies. But anyways, if you're curious about specific numbers, I made a video on this in the past going over the exact numbers that you can make at a big tech company. So definitely check that out. But anyways, just for reference, kind of differing startups versus FAANG companies. Typically at a startup, you'll make about like $70,000 to $90,000 compared to base salary at like a FAANG or like a big tech company, $120,000 to $150,000. Pretty big difference in terms of compensation. But not only that, part of big tech and like FAANG companies, their compensation packages include stock or shares of their respective companies. And if you know anything about the stock values of those FAANG companies, they have been performing really well. So not only do you get a great base salary, you get great stocks that typically appreciate over time, so you're left up with a huge lump of money, which is awesome. But by contrast, at startups, they may not even include stock in their compensation package, or they may not have even gone public yet. So there are many like insecure issues related to stock at startups. Alright, so in terms of job safety, just consider this. When is the last time that you've heard Google say this?
I declare bankruptcy!
Exactly, never. Big tech, FAANG companies do not go out of business because they are tech giants. The world is relying on them. Because there's always so much demand for those companies and they're continually growing, there's always going to be job security and safety at those companies. But by contrast, if you work at a startup, it is possible and probable that that startup doesn't even exist in 5 years, or doesn't even exist by the end of the year because they just went out of business. To kind of give you guys an idea of this, once COVID hit last March, a lot of people either lost their jobs or their offers were rescinded. And typically those were with smaller companies. And obviously we know companies went out of business and they just like lost all their employees. There was obviously in those cases no job security, no job safety. But by contrast, big tech, FAANG not only stood afloat, but they actually grew. And in fact, I think Amazon, they started hiring even more people because they just had so much demand once everyone was home. So if you were working at one of those big tech companies, like I interned last summer, there was no real chance or any real worry that, oh no, I might lose my job. No, because we're working at Amazon, Amazon's not going anywhere. Just as generally, having a FAANG company on your resume provides so much value, brand name recognition, and so it may open you up to further opportunities. Maybe even if you work at a FAANG company and it doesn't work out or you just don't enjoy the culture, simply having that experience is phenomenal and it'll lead you to so many more opportunities that previously you didn't have. Alright, so now let's talk about startups, and number 1 for startups is growth. So yes, they may not pay the most, but they do definitely give a great opportunity for growth, not only technically, but also personally. At startups, there are less people, and so when there are less people, typically each person is more valuable. Just kind of the principal idea, if something is rare, like a diamond, it is worth more in the market. Now, that doesn't directly mean that each person is paid way more than at a FAANG company, but it does mean that each person takes on more tasks and more responsibility. For example, at a FAANG company, you may only be like a front-end engineer or only a a back-end engineer, but at a startup, they may require you to do both. Whether or not you have experiences in both is immaterial. You gotta do both the front end and the back end. And that's just kind of the essence of startup, startup culture. Now, this whole culture is really great in a sense because it gives you more ownership on your project, meaning that you have more direct results under your own name, that you accomplish more things. And so what that typically leads you to is you're able to fulfill higher level roles. Like for example, you may be easily promoted at a startup, while at a FAANG company, it may take you a little more time to develop and really show that you can accomplish things and really get promoted. The door for career growth is wide open at a startup, so it is very easy to take that down. At FAANG companies, it is very easy for things to be micromanaged.
A more micro form of management. Jim, what is that called?
Microregiment?
Boom. Yes.
A manager for a manager for a manager. At the very bottom of the chain, there's you. Your impact on the organization is so minimal that you could be easily replaced, that you're not that value to the company whatsoever. Like they could just hire the next person down the line who could solve a leak code problem using data structures and algorithms. That is your value at a FAANG company. But at a startup, they need you. They need you to fulfill your tasks. If you don't fulfill the task, it is very possible that the company may not be able to stay afloat. So your value is just exponentially higher at a startup compared to a FAANG company. All right, so now let's talk about Pro 2 for big tech, and that is there are many people. Many people equals many teams, and many teams equals many learning opportunities. One of my friends who actually interned at Google last summer, he was actually on my channel twice. He mentioned how he was working on the Google Maps team, but the thing is he had to work with APIs and technologies that another team was dealing with, and so he was in regular communication with other teams, and so hence he actually was able to learn a lot more. That's just the general trend with big tech companies. They have many different departments that have teams within those sub teams. There are so many people, each one with like a unique experience, a unique tech stack. If you interact with, you can definitely learn a lot from. For example, just the Google example, there are so many Google services out there. There's Google Maps, Google Search, Shopping, Drive, YouTube, so many out there that if you just stumble across someone who works at a different department, have a chat with them, whether you need their tech stack for whatever you're working on is irrelevant, because just speaking to them, you'll learn so much. Additionally, compared to startup, we know that big tech companies have like the most rigorous coding interviews. For example, it isn't too hard to pass an interview for a startup, but a big tech company like Amazon, Facebook, Google typically have a rigorous coding interview because they want to obviously hire the best, hire the most qualified and accomplished candidates. And literally one of Amazon's leadership principles is hire and develop the best, because they only want the best working in their company. And so with that being said, everyone hired into like a big tech company has to pass through these rigorous interviews, so that produces a really like ambitious and highly accomplishing culture within the company. And so although some people may see it as somewhat workaholic, that people are just like working all the time, but some people may think, hey, workaholic, that's great, I love to work. And so yeah, there are people like that. And so if you vibe with that, big tech may be the thing for you. Also at big tech, there is so much mentorship because they can offer so many personnel to help you out with literally anything that you need. Me, for example, as an intern, I literally had 3 people to help me out: a manager, a mentor, and an onboarding buddy, literally there to answer any questions that I had to really ensure that I was successful. Startups may not be able to afford the personnel to go through this mentorship, but big tech companies, there are definitely going to be so many people out there who can help you and really ensure that you succeed. Now, pro number 2 for startup, it is typically a fast-paced work environment. So typically at a FAANG company, whenever they want to deploy a new thing, they have a slow, methodical approach that they have to follow this, then this, then this. But startups typically don't have like this set plan. They typically are kind of like scrappy. They just like do. Fast paced, always pushing to get like the next thing out. And it's honestly like a pretty fun environment if you're down for this. Also with the fast paced environment, you get a lot of experiences really fast. Because at like a FAANG company, if they want you to do like task X and they give you like 4 weeks to do that, at a startup, you're probably gonna need to get it done within 1 week because they literally have to keep on developing. Otherwise, their business is not gonna stay afloat. And so with that being said, you're gonna gain that 4 weeks worth of experience literally within 1 week. You learn a whole lot more in a whole lot less amount of time. And so it is just wonderful. And so honestly, you could just take those qualifications, put them on your resume, go reach out, meet up with a FAANG company recruiter, say that you have a whole lot of qualifications and a whole lot of experiences and so many technologies that you know, and then ultimately get a job at a FAANG company. Because honestly, why not enjoy the compensation, security, mentorship that exists at a FAANG company? So now lastly, I just want to take a moment, balance out startups versus FAANG overall. So I've talked about the pros of working at FAANG, I've talked about the pros of working at startups. At the end of the day, it doesn't honestly matter which company you specifically work at. Working at like a company like Amazon or Google does not make you a better software engineer than someone who works at a startup. I mean, some people have like a FAANG pride, like they just look down at anyone who doesn't work at a FAANG company. That is honestly like fundamentally wrong. You are as good as you're willing to be. At any company that you work at, you have to ensure that you have great work fulfillment, that you actually enjoy going to work every single day, that you don't really see it as work, but it's kind of like fun to go to work in a sense. But also you have to ensure that you're continuously learning, always learning the newest thing that is out there. You should try to avoid working on like older technologies or older tech stacks, because if you're working with a team that work with like older technologies and then ultimately you want a new job, all the skills on your resume are essentially going to be obsolete. No one's going to want a person who only knows how to code in C instead of learning how to code in Java or Python, which you should know. That's just like a small example. So just ensure that you're always happy and always learning. I mean, obviously more compensation is nice, but ultimately find your own home. Well, that's about all I have for this video. I really hope that you guys enjoyed it, and if you did, be sure to let me know by hitting that thumbs up button. And lastly, just as always, for more content, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see y'all in the next video.